My son-in-law believed I was clueless about him pilfering cash from me, viewing me as a feeble elderly guy. But when he crept into my bedroom yet again to snag a few $100 from my wallet, he was stunned silent by what he encountered. He'll always remember it. Before we go on, please hit subscribe on the channel and drop a comment with the current time and your location. My fingers shook as I tallied the notes for the third round. 20, 40, 60. The figures swam in my vision, yet the outcome stayed the same. $1,000 gone from my wallet. I perched on the side of my bed, gazing at the battered leather billfold that once belonged to my dad. For 68 years, I'd grabbed it each morning from its fixed place on the nightstand. This dawn felt off, incorrect. Perhaps I used it on something, I murmured to myself, but the phrase rang empty. Where could I have dropped $1,000? The market? My regular coffee at Murphy's Diner? I rummaged desperately beneath the bed, through my chest of drawers and every coat pocket. Zilch. The nauseous knot in my gut tightened with each barren search. The aroma of frying bacon wafted up from downstairs. Helen was humming a melody from the radio she favored. Everyday noises from what ought to have been an ordinary start to the day. But now everything was tilted, like a painting nudged just off center. I descended the stairs at a deliberate pace, my limbs heavier than normal. Helen was at the stove, flour speckling her blue apron, hair tied in the ponytail she'd sported since her teen years. "Morning, Dad," she grinned over her shoulder. "Coffee's brewed. Helen, have you spotted my cash anywhere? I've lost track of $1,000. Worry creased her features right away. "Cash, Dad? I haven't touched a thing in your room. Are you certain you didn't spend it? Maybe it slipped your mind." The query hit harder than expected. Was I turning into one of those seniors who misplaced memories? Who pointed fingers at kin for theft due to a slipping brain? What are you two murmuring about? Cleo materialized in the entryway, still clad in his work gear from the day before. His shadowy gaze shifted between Helen and me. "Financial woes again? Cleo, you haven't entered my room, right?" I maintained an even, relaxed tone. His stance shifted at once, arms folded, shoulders rigid. "What are you suggesting, Mr. Hargrove? That I'm a crook? I'm not suggesting a thing. Just inquiring if you've noticed. I pull 16-hour shifts to support this household." His tone escalated abruptly. "I don't have to swipe from anybody, least of all relatives." Helen positioned herself between us, her hands waving anxiously. "Dad, Cleo wouldn't dream of it. There must be some reason." But I observed Cleo's expression as he talked, the way his eyes dodged mine. The rapid, rehearsed defensiveness. A chill took root in my core. "Naturally," I murmured softly. "I'm confident it'll surface." Cleo snatched his lunch sack from the counter, scrutinized his reflection in the hall mirror with extra attention, then made for the exit. Running late for the job. The door banged louder than needed. Helen laid a soft hand on my arm. "Dad, you've been strained since Mom died. Grief can fool our thoughts sometimes." I nodded, yet my gaze tracked Cleo's pickup as it vanished along Maple Street. 3 years solo had honed my awareness of every cent in that wallet. I wasn't going senile. I was getting robbed. That night saw us assembled in the living room like a typical clan. Helen lounged on the sofa, folding clothes, organizing Cleo's work tees into tidy stacks. I feigned interest in the sports page, but my attention kept wandering to Cleo, who paced by the window. He couldn't stay put. Every couple of minutes he'd glance at his phone, rake fingers through his hair, or tweak the shades. The jittery vibe pouring off him was nearly tangible. "Sweetheart," he announced abruptly, pivoting to Helen with a grin that appeared overly vivid. "I've got a treat for you." "Shut your eyes." Helen's expression glowed with real joy. "Lo, what have you done?" "Just shut your eyes and extend your hand." I dipped my newspaper a bit, observing as Cleo pulled a tiny velvet case from his coat pocket. The sort from upscale shops in the city center, not our usual bargain spots. Helen inhaled sharply upon opening it. "Oh my word, it's gorgeous. How did you afford this?" The gold necklace gleamed under the living room lamp. Delicate yet solid. 18 karat, I'd wager. Genuine stuff, not cheap plating. I'd spent ample years in Detroit's auto sector to spot real quality. "I took on extra hours at the depot," Cleo declared, his chest swelling with satisfaction. "Labored all weekend hauling loads, double overtime wages. You never mentioned weekend shifts." Helen's words carried awe, not doubt. Kept it under wraps for the surprise. "When you aim to support your loved ones, you make it work." I creased my paper neatly. "They compensate well for weekend gigs nowadays." Cleo's grin tense just a touch. Time and a half Saturdays, double Sundays, plus danger pay for chemical loads. Which depot? I kept my voice chatty, vaguely curious. The one near 8 Mile, fresh deal with Ford. He was already assisting Helen in clasping the chain around her neck. Risky job, but worthwhile to see my wife beam. Helen flung her arms around him, joyful tears in her eyes. It's the loveliest gift I've ever received. I watched their hug, mentally crunching numbers. At least $800 for a piece like that, perhaps higher. Odd how the figures aligned. $1,000 vanished, $800 on jewels. The arithmetic was growing disturbingly logical. You're pampering her, I remarked, mustering a smile. She merits pampering, Cleo shot back. But his gaze locked mine with what could have been defiance. A guy ought to look after his kin, no matter what. The receipt rustled in his rear pocket as he settled. I glimpsed the shop emblem. Silverman's upscale jewels on Woodward Avenue. Lavish preferences for a driver grabbing weekend depot hours. Well, I stated, rising and extending my limbs. I think I'll head to bed early. Busy day ahead. Dad, you okay? Helen glanced up from checking her image in the necklace. Just weary, dear night, but I didn't drift off. I sat on my bed's edge, wallet in grasp, tuning into their cheerful chatter floating up from below. Helen's giggles blended with Cleo's bass tones, sketching an image of homey harmony. The links were getting hard to dismiss. Vanished funds, lavish present, fibs about weekend labor I could confirm with a single call to the depot area. I'd engineered for 43 years. I understood problem-solving via evidence trails, even if the answer was unwelcome. 3 weeks on, I was on my bed at 8 a.m., wallet spread open, confronting the stark reality, precisely $500 absent. No mix-up this round, no questioning my recall. I'd inspected my wallet daily since the initial grab, tracking every spent dollar mentally. Last night I'd held $800, now $300. The lift occurred post-midnight while Helen and I slumbered. Cleo had arrived last from his alleged late shift, stumbling in near 11:30 with beer scent on him. I placed the wallet on the nightstand and stepped to the window. Cleo's truck had departed. He headed out at 7:30 on the dot each morning. But today I'd caught him in the bath at 6, humming, genuinely humming as he prepped for the day. The routine was clarifying. Swipe cash, behave ordinarily, perhaps even upbeat, pause a few days, then splash it on something to delight and thank Helen. Maintain her allegiance split between spouse and parent, but I refused to play victim longer. I grabbed my phone and called for details. Detroit Electronics, downtown area, please. The clerk's tone was accommodating. Detroit Electronics. How may I assist, morning? Do you stock tiny concealed cameras? Absolutely, sir. Various options. What's the use? Home protection. Something unobtrusive. We offer wireless models with night sight. Motion start. Links to your mobile. Quite in demand recently. I'll stop by this morning to browse. Downstairs, Helen prepped for her supermarket job. She looked up as I came down, already in my fine coat. Dad heading out early? To the city, hun. Gotta grab an item from the tech shop. Need Cleo to give you a lift? He said he's going that direction for work. The irony hit me. No thanks. I like driving myself. Helen pecked my cheek. Watch those city roads. Construction on Woodward. I squeezed her shoulder, regretting I couldn't reveal the truth yet. Not until I had undeniable proof. In my vehicle, I eyed the rear view before reversing from the drive. My image seemed altered from recent months. Resolute. The bewildered mourning widower had vanished. The engineer had returned, set to tackle an issue with systematic accuracy. The lost money wasn't haphazard. The sums, the schedule, the guarded responses, all indicated a deliberate scheme. Someone figured they were nicking from a scatterbrained senior who'd overlook or not resist. They were set to discover their error. I motored toward central Detroit with firm grip, my thoughts already sorting the needed specs. Night vision, motion trigger, phone link, perhaps sound capture if state rules permitted. Proof first, face-off next, resolution after. The setup had shifted, but Cleo was unaware. Tech World Electronics stood on Woodward Avenue like a hub of potential. I parked neatly between two small vehicles, my technical mindset already noting the store's entry cams. To nab a pilferer, I had to think like one. The electronic bell signaled my entry. Aisles of devices extended ahead. Mobiles, pads, safety gear. A youthful attendant with heavy specs neared, likely pondering what a senior wanted with such tech. Can I assist with something particular, sir? Home surveillance cams. Something subtle yet dependable. His demeanor perked with expert zeal. For home or business, personal. Need sharp visuals, particularly in dim light. He guided me to a wall of displays packed with camera types. Packages touted features from films. Night sight, motion sense, phone integration. Tech had leaped forward since my professional era. This one, he indicated a sleek black unit. Captures up to 12 hours charged. I reviewed the spec sheet. Darkness image clarity. Sharp face ID from 10 feet. IR detectors kick in when light dips low. Motion trigger adjustability. Set via app. Ignores shades or minor shifts, but grabs key actions. Big hit with buyers lately. The Night Eye Pro Mini nestled in my hand. Teenier than anticipated, but specs impressed. 1080p, 140-degree view. Wireless. All an engineer could desire for proof collection. Sold. On the ride back, the compact box rested on the seat like a burden. 4 decades engineering. Now applied to snag a crook in my house. The twist didn't escape me. Helen's car was absent from the drive. Her work went till 6. Cleo's truck gone too, leaving the place empty for setup. Ideal window. Indoors, I laid out the camera parts on the kitchen table like puzzle bits. The guide was refreshingly simple. Attach Wi-Fi link, app download, tune settings. Basic stuff even for my generation. In my room, I assessed the space with an engineer's precision. The nightstand faced the dresser, home to family snapshots. Behind the biggest frame, an 80-10 of Helen's nuptials offered ideal concealment. Camera placement demanded exactness. Too elevated, missed the stand. Too low, obstructed by furnishings. I tweaked the angle thrice for prime view of wallet spot and my bedside water tumbler. The phone app linked instantly. Secure feed showed crisp grayscale room view with timestamp and power gauge. I checked night mode by drawing shades. IR activated, exposing details in eerie sharpness. Motion tuning needed care. Overly reactive meant false alerts from flickers or house creaks. Too lax could skip faint moves. I chose medium and tested by strolling by the stand. It nabbed my action flawlessly, pinging my phone. Now the lure. I counted $300 precisely from leftover funds, fanning bills visibly in the open wallet. Not excessive to look sloppy, but enough to entice a repeat offender. The tumbler returned to its spot, a ritual from my wife's era when she pushed hydration. Now it'd add proof if guesses held, all set. Cam concealed, lure placed, app ready. I flicked off the room light and lingered in the doorway, aware tomorrow would alter all. In the gloom, the cam's small red light flashed once, then faded to watch mode. Sevator hit like a plant siren. My lid snapped open, conditioned by years of dawn shifts, but this felt unique. Today wasn't about puzzled wallet checks. Today was proof gathering. The wallet rested as arranged, but bills had vanished. All $300 poofed without hint. No shock now. Just dark contentment that my snare succeeded flawlessly. I grabbed my smartphone with mildly quivering hands. Not from years or hesitation, but eagerness. The Secure View app listed one motion clip at 2:47 a.m. Prime household sleep hour. Ideal for a heist. My digit paused over play. Viewing this would erase uncertainties, no more leeway, just raw recorded fact. The IR video started with vacant room. Then the door eased open cautiously. A shape glided with honed caution to my nightstand. The cam's face tech was spotless. Cleo's traits appeared in flawless detail nearing my sleep zone. He proceeded like a veteran. No pauses, no groping. Direct to wallet, digits nimbly extracting notes. Swift tally to confirm sum. Skilled smoothness hinting at habit. But then came a twist that iced my veins. Post-pocketing my cash, Cleo lifted my water tumbler, the one I sipped daily, and purposefully hawked into it. Not by chance, not sloppily. A deliberate show of scorn and disdain. "How long's this gone on?" I muttered to the screen. How often have I ingested his saliva? I rerun the vile segment twice. The grab was systematic, routine. But that hawk, that was intimate. That was a guy who not just robbed his supporter, but deeply loathed him. My hands trembled, saving the clip to phone and cloud. Such solid proof couldn't risk glitch loss. Downstairs stayed hushed. Helen prepping for her shift, likely humming over coffee. Cleo faking rest from his night work, acting the exhausted provider. I sought counsel, an impartial ear to sort my find. Jim Patterson picked up on Ring 2. We'd collaborated 20 years pre-retirement, shared enough breaks and tech puzzles for solid trust. Jim, apologies for the early buzz. Need guidance on something grave. What's up, pal? You sound rattled. I just nabbed my son-in-law thieving from me via cam. Quiet hung on the line. At last, you dead sure? Footage proof. Clear as day, his mug. Him grabbing my dough. Him doing stuff proving it wasn't debut. What'll you do? Unsure yet. Helen suspects zilch. This'll shatter her. Proof's proof, Lester. Can't brush off theft for emotions. I get it, but she adores him, clueless on her hubby's true nature. Maybe she needs the truth. After hanging up, I sat on my bed edge, staring at the frozen video frame showing Cleo's face clearly illuminated by infrared light. The camera had captured everything perfectly. Timing, actions, identity. Irrefutable proof of systematic theft. Now I had evidence, but what exactly was I going to do with it? Through the thin walls, I could hear Helen moving around the master bedroom, getting dressed for another day of innocent ignorance. Soon she'd kiss my forehead goodbye and head off to work, completely unaware that her husband was a thief and worse. The living room felt different this morning. Same furniture, same photographs, same morning light filtering through lace curtains my wife had hung 15 years ago. But the atmosphere had changed completely. I settled into my recliner with coffee that tasted bitter despite the cream. On the side table, a leather-bound photo album caught my attention. Pictures from December when Helen and Cleo first moved in. Everyone smiling, everyone hopeful. The contrast with this morning's reality hit like a physical blow. Opening the album brought back memories I'd tried to preserve. December 20th, their arrival day. Boxes stacked in the driveway. Helen crying with relief. Cleo shaking my hand with genuine gratitude. Dad, we're so grateful, Helen had said, hugging me tight enough to crack ribs. Without you, I honestly don't know what we'd have done. Cleo had stood behind her, humble and appreciative. Lester, I promise we'll get back on our feet quickly. Just need a few months to find steady work. I'll help with repairs around the house, he'd added. Earn our keep while we're here. Take your time, I told them both. Family helps family. That's what your mother would have wanted. Those first weeks had been wonderful. Cleo actually did help. Fixed the leaky kitchen faucet I'd been ignoring. Cleaned gutters before the heavy January snow. Even helped me organize tools in the garage. We'd shared evening beers and talked about his plans to find better employment. Helen glowed with happiness having family close again, seeing her father and husband getting along, building what she hoped would be a permanent arrangement. She'd started planning holiday decorations for next Christmas, talking about traditions we could establish, but when had gratitude transformed into entitlement? When had Cleo's respectful Mr. Hargrove become the dismissive Lester, accompanied by eye rolls? When had helpful suggestions become bitter criticisms about my age, my habits, my supposed interference in their marriage? The change had been gradual enough that I'd explained it away. Financial stress making him irritable, job hunting frustration affecting his mood, normal adjustment period for 3 adults sharing space. I'd made excuses for increasingly disrespectful behavior. His complaints about my television being too loud. His suggestions that I eat dinner in the kitchen while they use the dining room. His pointed comments about old people who couldn't manage their own money. Looking back now, those comments about money management felt particularly insulting. He'd been stealing from me while criticizing my supposed financial incompetence. The photo album showed Christmas morning. Cleo opening the expensive tool set I'd bought him. Helen delighted with her new winter coat. All of us gathered around the tree like a real family. 3 weeks later, he'd committed his first theft. How long had he been planning it? Had he scoped out my bedroom during those helpful visits, noted my habits, my routines, the location of my wallet? Love you, Dad. Helen's voice startled me from my memories. She stood in the doorway, dressed for work, purse slung over her shoulder. She bent to kiss my forehead. The same gesture every morning since moving in. Love you too, sweetheart. You seem quiet today. Everything okay? The weight of video evidence felt heavy in my pocket. How could I tell her that her husband was a thief? That the man she trusted completely had been systematically robbing her father, while she slept beside him, just thinking about things. Go on, don't be late for work. She headed toward the door, then paused. Dad, I know having us here has been an adjustment, but I'm really grateful. Cleo is too. Even if he doesn't always show it well. The irony was almost unbearable. After her car disappeared down Maple Street, I closed the photo album and returned it to the side table. Those December memories felt like artifacts from someone else's life. A more naive version of myself who'd believed in the goodness of family, who'd trusted without verification. The camera evidence demanded action. But what kind? Confrontation would shatter Helen's world. Calling police would destroy the family permanently. Staying silent meant accepting continued theft and disrespect. I had proof now. The question was, what kind of justice did I want? The chamomile tea steamed in my late wife's favorite china cup. But even Martha's old remedy for stress couldn't calm the storm brewing inside me. I sat at the kitchen table with my 2025 wall calendar spread open, red pen in hand, marking dates like a detective building the case. January 15th, the first real conflict. I drew a sharp X over the date, remembering how Cleo had tracked mud through the house despite my simple request about removing shoes at the door. "You old people always find something to complain about," he'd said, voice dripping with contempt. Helen had jumped in immediately. "Dad's just particular about his floors. It's his house." But I'd seen the look in Cleo's eyes, not embarrassment or apology, resentment, like I was some burden he had to tolerate rather than the man providing him shelter. January 28th, another X. "Maybe if you didn't interfere so much with our decisions, our finances would be better." That's what he'd said when I'd suggested Helen might benefit from overtime hours at the supermarket. Not a discussion, an accusation, as if my gentle advice was somehow sabotaging their future. I flipped to February, pen hovering over multiple potential dates. The disrespect had accelerated that month, becoming a weekly occurrence instead of isolated incidents. February 14th, Valentine's Day, the day he'd given Helen that expensive gold chain. The day after he'd stolen my first $1,000, my hand trembled slightly as I marked that date with a particularly bold X. He'd been planning it even then, sizing up my routines while criticizing my outdated lifestyle. Every complaint about house rules had been reconnaissance for theft. February 26th. "This house feels like a prison with all these ridiculous rules." That comment had stung because Helen nodded along, caught between loyalty to her husband and respect for her father. I'd watched her struggle with divided allegiances while Cleo systematically undermined my authority in my own home. March dates multiplied under red ink. Each X represented another verbal assault disguised as family tension. "Old folks can't handle change. Maybe it's time to consider assisted living. Some people shouldn't manage their own money." The last comment made me sick now. While questioning my mental capacity, he'd been stealing proof of his own criminal behavior. I closed the calendar and checked the kitchen clock. 7:30 in the evening. Helen would be working late inventory at the supermarket. Cleo was supposedly picking up overtime at the warehouse, though I knew better now what his evening activities actually involved. Tomorrow I'd drive downtown for special supplies. Tonight I'd plan. The video evidence had shown me Cleo's criminal nature. These marked calendar dates revealed his manipulative character. Both pieces of information would prove useful very soon. I rinsed Martha's teacup carefully, treating it with the respect Cleo had never shown this house or its owner. Tomorrow would begin the final phase of a lesson 3 months in the making. Some people needed to learn that disrespecting your benefactor came with consequences. Pranksters' paradise blazed in neon letters above a storefront that looked like a carnival had exploded. I checked the address twice before parking, feeling oddly out of place among the colorful displays of whoopee cushions and fake spiders. But this wasn't about humor. This was about justice. Inside, shelves stretched floor to ceiling with every conceivable practical joke. Buzzer handshakes, squirting flowers, rubber snakes. A young clerk with purple hair and multiple piercings approached, clearly curious about the serious-faced grandfather browsing shock devices. "Looking for anything specific, sir? Something that delivers consequences for unwanted behavior? Harmless but memorable." She led me to a display case filled with various electrical novelties. "These shock items are pretty popular. What kind of application did you have in mind?" I examined a shocking wallet, testing its weight and texture. Real leather exterior, indistinguishable from an ordinary billfold. "How strong is the electrical charge?" "Completely safe, just 9 volts. Enough to surprise someone without causing any harm. Battery lasts about 6 months with normal use." Define normal use. Most customers deploy it once or twice before the novelty wears off. But this model is built for repeat applications if needed. Perfect, I tested it on my own palm. A sharp zap that would definitely get someone's attention without causing injury. After 43 years of engineering, I appreciated good technical design, even in novelty items. "I'll take it, and I need realistic counterfeit money. Movie quality." Her eyebrows raised slightly, but she led me to another section filled with prop currency. "These bills look identical to real money in normal lighting. Only detailed inspection reveals the motion picture use-only watermarks." I examined the fake hundreds and 20s. Impressed by the paper quality and printing precision, they felt authentic. Weight distributed correctly, even had the proper texture of worn currency. How much for $300 worth? $37.50 for the prop money plus $9.90 for the shock wallet. Call it $50 even. I handed over the real cash, thinking about poetic justice. $300 of fake money to replace the $30 real dollars Cleo had stolen. He wanted to take my money. Tomorrow night he'd get exactly what he deserved. The clerk packaged everything carefully to prevent accidental activation. Hope this works out for whatever you're planning. Oh, it will work perfectly. Back in my car, I secured the purchases in my trunk and reviewed the installation plan during the drive home. After Helen fell asleep, but before Cleo's usual theft window, probably around midnight, replaced my real wallet with the shocking version, loaded with counterfeit currency, positioned to look authentic in darkness. At the red light on Maple Street, I checked my rearview mirror. Just an ordinary grandfather running afternoon errands. Nobody would suspect that tonight I'd prepare something my son-in-law would never forget. The trap was chosen. Now came the setting. The Helen ladled beef stew into our bowls with the careful attention she always gave family dinners, trying to create warmth in a house that had grown steadily colder over recent weeks. The kitchen smelled of bay leaves and simmering vegetables, but underneath the domestic comfort lurked something poisonous. "This looks wonderful, sweetheart." I kept my voice deliberately pleasant while studying Cleo across the table. He'd been unusually quiet since arriving home, picking out his food instead of devouring it with his typical enthusiasm. "Dad, you've been working on something in the garage all afternoon." "New project, just organizing tools." Amazing what you find when you really examine things closely. Cleo's fork paused halfway to his mouth. Something in my tone had caught his attention, though he couldn't identify the threat yet. Speaking of examining things, I continued, buttering my bread with deliberate slowness. "I've been thinking about home security lately. Fascinating how technology lets you monitor everything that happens even when you're sleeping." "Security?" Helen looked up from her stew. "Are you worried about break-ins?" "Not break-ins exactly. More like internal security issues. Someone in this neighborhood thinks other people's money is community property." Cleo set down his fork entirely. "There you go again with your paranoia, Lester. Maybe you forget where you spend money and blame other people." "Paranoia?" I smiled, but there was nothing warm in it. "That's an interesting theory, Cleo. Tell me, how much did that warehouse overtime pay you last weekend?" His jaw tightened. "Why does that matter?" "Just curious about wage rates these days. Seems like some people earn money very easily for very little actual work." Helen sensed the underlying hostility and jumped in quickly. "Can't we just have one peaceful family meal? You two have been tense with each other all week. Your father's been making accusations he can't prove." Cleo snapped, his facade of respectful son-in-law finally cracking. "I'm tired of listening to complaints from a cheap old man who counts every penny like it's his last." The silence that followed was deafening. Helen's spoon clattered against her bowl. "Cheap old man," I repeated softly, leaning back in my chair. "That's a fascinating choice of words from someone living rent-free in my house." "Lester," Cleo started, but I held up my hand. "No, please continue. I'm very interested in your perspective on my character, particularly your thoughts about my money management habits." Helen looked between us with growing alarm. "What is this really about? You're both acting like you know something I don't." I studied Cleo's flushed face, seeing fear beneath the anger. He knew he'd gone too far, revealed too much of his true feelings. But he didn't know how much I actually knew. "Your husband and I just have different philosophies about respect," I said finally. "Isn't that right, Cleo?" He pushed back from the table abruptly. "I don't have to sit there and listen to this nonsense." "No," I agreed calmly. "You don't. This is my house after all." After he stormed upstairs, Helen began clearing dishes with shaky hands. "Dad, what's really going on? You've both been acting strange. Sometimes people show their true character when they think nobody's watching." She paused, dish towel in hand. "What does that mean?" "You'll understand soon enough, sweetheart." I excused myself and headed upstairs, leaving Helen to puzzle over the evening's tensions. In my bedroom, he retrieved the shock wallet and counterfeit money from their hiding place behind my dresser. In a few hours, when the house settled into sleep, I'd set the final trap. Tomorrow morning would bring the confrontation months in the making. Tonight, justice prepared to spring. The red digits on my bedside clock glowed. 1:57 a.m. when I heard the first soft footstep in the hallway. I controlled my breathing, keeping it slow and deep like someone lost in peaceful sleep. While my heart hammered against my ribs with anticipation, 3 months of theft and humiliation were about to meet their consequences. The shock wallet sat innocuously on my nightstand, loaded with movie prop hundreds that looked genuine in dim light. Every detail had been planned with an engineer's precision. Bait positioned exactly where Cleo expected it. Battery charged to optimal voltage. Fake money aged to feel authentic. Another footstep closer now. My bedroom door opened with the barest whisper of hinges. Cleo had practiced this routine enough to avoid every creaking floorboard, every loose carpet edge. He moved like a professional burglar in his own family's home. I kept my eyes closed but tracked his approach through subtle changes in air movement and the soft sounds of careful placement. 3 steps toward the dresser, paused to verify my apparent unconsciousness. 2 more steps to the nightstand. The moment of truth arrived with electrical precision. "Ah, what the?" Cleo's agonized shout shattered the night silence as 9 volts of justice shot through his nervous system. The fake money scattered across the floor as he stumbled backward, clutching his shocked hand against his chest. I opened my eyes and reached for the bedside lamp, flooding the room with warm yellow light. "Oh my, what woke me up?" I asked with perfectly feigned confusion. "Cleo, what are you doing in my bedroom at 2 in the morning?" He stood frozen beside my bed, movie prop bills scattered around his feet like evidence in a courtroom. His right hand still trembled from the electrical shock, fingers opening and closing reflexively. "I was just getting some water from the kitchen," he stammered, but his eyes couldn't meet mine. "Water?" I sat up slowly, making a show of adjusting my pajamas from my wallet. "And how did those fake bills end up all over my floor?" "Fake bills? I don't understand what you're talking about." "The same way you didn't understand the previous times you stole from me." I reached for my smartphone on the nightstand, thumb hovering over the saved video file. "The same way you didn't understand when you spit in my drinking water." His face went completely white. "You're crazy. I never took anything from you, really." I held up the phone, screen angled so he could see the paused video footage. "Should we review the security footage together? I have excellent recordings of your late-night activities." The trapped animal look in his eyes told me everything I needed to know. 3 months of careful planning had worked exactly as designed, but our private confrontation was about to become a family crisis. "What's all that noise? Is everything okay up there?" Helen's voice called from the hallway, sleepy and concerned. Both men froze, knowing the moment of full revelation had finally arrived. Helen appeared in the doorway, wearing her blue terry cloth robe, hair disheveled from sleep, trying to make sense of why 2 grown men were wide awake and shouting at 2 in the morning. Her eyes took in the scene. Scattered fake money, her husband's guilty expression, her father holding his phone like evidence. "What's happening here? Why is everyone awake?" She stepped into the room, slippers shuffling across the carpet. "Cleo, why do you look like you've seen a ghost?" "Your husband has been stealing my money for months," I said quietly, watching her face carefully. I finally caught him in the act. "Dad, that's impossible." Helen's voice held automatic defense, the loyalty of a wife protecting her spouse. "Cleo would never do something like that." "You must be mistaken. Watch this video and tell me what you see." I held out my phone, finger hovering over the play button. Helen shook her head at first, but the certainty in my voice made her step closer. The infrared footage began playing clear as daylight despite the darkness, showing Cleo's careful approach to my nightstand. "This can't be real," she whispered. But her voice already carried the weight of growing recognition. The video continued. Cleo removing money from my wallet with practiced efficiency, counting bills quickly. Then the moment that made Helen gasp aloud. Her husband deliberately spitting in my water glass. "Cleo?" She turned to face him, eyes wide with horror. "Is that really you? And you spit in Dad's drinking water?" "This is all a setup." Cleo's voice rose desperately. "He's trying to frame me. You can't trust that footage. He could have edited it somehow. But I can see your face clearly. That's our bedroom door in the background. That's the exact shirt you wore yesterday." Helen's voice grew smaller with each observation. "How could you edit something so specific?" I let the video speak for itself, watching my daughter's world crumble as undeniable evidence replaced comfortable illusions. 3 months of lies were dissolving in real time. "Helen, you have to believe me," Cleo pleaded. "I work hard to provide for us. Why would I need to steal from your father?" "Because you've been stealing instead of working," I said simply. "Those expensive gifts you bought Helen, my money. Those weekend shifts you claimed at the warehouse. More lies to cover your theft." Helen sank onto the edge of my bed, hands covering her face as the full scope of deception became clear. The gold chain around her neck, purchased with stolen money, the gratitude she'd felt for his hard work, all based on criminal behavior. "How long has this been going on?" she asked through her fingers. "At least 3 months. Probably since you moved in." Thessalent stretched like a wound opening. Finally, Helen raised her head and looked at her husband with eyes that held no love, only betrayal and disgust. "Pack your things," she whispered without looking up. "We're leaving tomorrow." Cleo started to protest, but Helen's raised hand stopped him cold. The damage was irreversible. Justice had arrived wearing the face of truth. By 3 Beaux-Arts the next afternoon, the sound of packing had replaced the morning's tense silence. Helen folded her clothes with mechanical precision, each movement careful and dignified despite the tears that occasionally fell onto her belongings. In contrast, Cleo threw items carelessly into cardboard boxes, slamming drawers and muttering under his breath about unfairness. I stayed nearby but didn't pressure her with conversation. Sometimes support meant simply being present while someone processed betrayal. "Dad, I owe you an apology," Helen said quietly as she wrapped her good dishes in newspaper. "I should have seen what was happening. Should have questioned where that money was coming from. You're not at fault, honey. You trusted like family should trust. That's not weakness. That's how good people live." She paused in her packing, looking around the guest room that had been her temporary home. "I don't know where we'll go. I just know we can't stay here anymore. You have your job, your own income. You'll figure it out." I handed her another sheet of newspaper. "And you'll always be welcome back here when you're ready. This is your home too." Outside, Cleo loaded boxes into his truck with aggressive efficiency, each movement broadcasting resentment. Neighbors pretended not to watch from their windows, but suburban curiosity was stronger than politeness. As Helen carried her final suitcase to the driveway, she stopped beside me on the front steps. "I hate that it came to this, but I'm glad you showed me the truth. Living with lies would have been worse. I'm proud of you for having the courage to face it." She hugged me tightly, the kind of embrace that said goodbye and thank you and I love you all at once. "I'll call you when we're settled. I need some time to process everything." Cleo slammed the truck tailgate shut and looked at me with barely controlled anger. "You'll regret destroying this family, old man. Well, see who's right in the end. Just drive carefully," I said evenly. "Take care of my daughter. That's all that matters now." Helen climbed into the passenger seat without looking back. The truck's engine rumbled to life, diesel exhaust clouding the April air. I watched them disappear down Maple Street, Helen's profile visible through the side window. Sad but resolute. The house felt different when I stepped back inside. Quieter, more spacious, Mennigan. I made a single cup of coffee instead of the family pot I'd grown accustomed to, then settled into my recliner with the evening paper. Outside, spring darkness settled peacefully over the neighborhood. No more missing money, no more disrespect, no more walking on eggshells in my own home. Justice hadn't been revenge. It had been protection. The engineering approach had worked perfectly. Identify the problem, design a solution, implement the fix, verify the results. Sometimes protecting family meant having the courage to reveal uncomfortable truths, even when those truths shattered comfortable illusions. My home was secure again. The problem was solved. If you like this story, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share your impressions of this story in the comments. To listen to the next story, click on the box on the left. Thank you for watching.